We have slow committee members here, so we'll get started as soon as we can. Good afternoon, everyone. Because there are so many meetings packed into this afternoon, we're going to go ahead and get started and hope that our other two committee members show up soon. We're going to start today with the State Library. And okay, where's the list? Can I have that? Thank you. Okay, we have Nathalie, am I saying that right? Nathalie? Natalie. Andrade. And the agency representative will be Morgan L. Miller, the state librarian. The new state librarian?
Yes.
Welcome.
First time.
Okay, so Natalia will do her presentation and then we'll ask for your response.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. I am Natalie Andrade, and I'm here with the Department of Legislative Services to present the Fiscal 26 allowance for the Maryland State Library Agency. On page 1 of the analysis, you will see that the Fiscal 26 budget increases by $5.1 million or 4.8%, bringing the total to $109.9 million. On page 2, there's an update on this $775,000 added to the Fiscal 25 budget for the State Library Network program to support the State Library Resource Center. The agency indicated that these funds were directed to the overall operating budget, which totals $14.6 million for Fiscal 25. At the bottom of page 2, the Fiscal 26 budget includes a proposed efficiency appropriation of $130,000 in general funds for the Deaf Culture Digital Library. Regarding this deficiency appropriation, the agency should comment on the need for these additional funds, including an explanation of why the initial Fiscal 25 appropriation was insufficient, how the additional funds will be used, and whether this reflects ongoing funding needs for the program. On page 3, Exhibit 1 breaks down the Fiscal 26 allowance. As you can see, $53 million is allocated to public library aid, $27.4 million to aid for local library employee fringe benefits, and $22.6 million to the State Library Network. On page 4, Exhibit 2 shows line item changes to the budget. As you can see, the $5.1 million increase is largely due to a $3.7 million increase in aid for local library employee fringe benefits, a $1.05 million increase in public library aid, and a net $209,000 increase in personnel expenses. Turning to page 6 of the analysis, the key observations section begins with an update of the Baltimore City Young Readers and Young Readers Matching Grant programs. MSLA has begun disbursing the $200,000 for the Baltimore City Young Readers program, and the fiscal 26 budget maintains level funding for both the Baltimore City Young Readers and Young Readers Matching Grant programs with $200,000 and $350,000 respectively. On page 7 begins a discussion of performance measures. Starting with library programs and attendance, Exhibit 3 outlines the impact of COVID-19 on library programs and attendance. Programs and attendance dropped sharply in fiscal 21 and fiscal 22, as recovery began in fiscal 23, with both metrics increasing. While there was a further improvement in fiscal 24, they remain below pre-pandemic levels. Exhibit 4 on page 8 shows changes in digital materials. From fiscal 21 to fiscal 22, all materials increased by 6.6% and access materials by 6.8%. But both metrics declined in fiscal 23, attributed to funding changes and shifts in user demand. Exhibit 5 on page 9 shows changes in patrons served and materials as accessed. After a decline in fiscal 21, both metrics grew significantly in fiscal 23, driven by the success on the Books on Demand service. In fiscal 24, there was a slight decrease, with MSLA anticipating a stabilization in the future. And to conclude, on page 10, the DLS recommendation is to concur with the governor's allowance. And with that, I conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to take any answers that you may have.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Sorry. We have Morgan Miller, the new state librarian. Welcome.
Thank you.
Want to introduce your panel with you?
Yes, thank you, Senator King. With me, I have our Chief Financial Officer, Donna Liberto. To my left, Tim Pratt, who's our Communications and Legislative Manager, and the Vice Chair of the State Library Board, Dr. Michelle Farmer. We also are joined today by our DBM analyst, Ryan Wilkins.
Oh, good.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm very happy to be here with you all today, Senator King and members of the committee. Prior to coming into this role in the summer, I've worked in Maryland's public libraries for 20 years, most recently as the director of the Cecil County Public Library in Northeastern Maryland. I'm here today to speak in regard to the Maryland State Library Agency's operating budget. And first, I want to thank Natalie for her excellent analysis and partnership in analyzing our budget. As the new state librarian, I'm very excited to work with the Moore-Miller administration and the General Assembly on behalf of public libraries all throughout Maryland and the communities that they serve. Public libraries are institutions that uniquely align with all of the Moore-Miller administration's priorities, from early childhood outcomes and setting students up for success, to driving economic futures, connecting Marylanders to jobs, advancing infrastructure, digital equity and access, and helping all Marylanders to thrive. Libraries deliver life-changing access to services, information, technology, and skill development that benefit people of all ages and throughout every county in the state. What's more, many local and state government agencies, our schools, and our nonprofits rely on libraries in their communities to connect citizens with their own services and resources as well. And our operating models are some of the most effective and efficient, generating significant short and long-term returns at both the state and the local levels. Our state funding is critical to the success of our 24 public library systems and the people who depend on them every day. So in this budget proposal, you'll see that the governor has supported the scheduled per capita increase for state aid to counties and regional libraries. That's the largest percentage of our budget at about 48%. Other agency programs that are supported by the operating budget that we're proud to highlight include the Library for the Blind and Print Disabled, which was this year named the Library of the Year by the National Library Service, something we're very proud of. Our State Library Resource Center, which provides training, programs, resources, the state's interlibrary loan system to not just our 24 public library systems, but school and academic libraries as well, in addition to providing high-speed broadband and internet to 15 library systems, as well as 23 municipalities, which include municipal governments as well as EMS services. And our Governor's Young Readers program, which Natalie highlighted, since its inception in 2023, it's now serving 40,000 children a year who are birthed to age 5 with books every month and prioritizing doing so in low-income locales. And finally, our Deaf Culture Digital Library. We've been asked to comment on funding for the Deaf Culture Digital Library, which you'll hear me refer to as DCDL, in regard to our deficiency request. The Deaf Culture Digital Library was established in law in 2014 to provide leadership and guidance in offering resources about deaf culture, acquiring and preserving an excellent condition of deaf resources in digital formats, furnishing access to information regardless of a person's location, and providing highly competent assistance to Maryland residents and library staff in local public systems, academic libraries and colleges, and other libraries throughout Maryland to better serve deaf and hard of hearing customers. Over 1.2 million Marylanders identify as being deaf or hard of hearing, and this number is expected to increase as the population ages. So goes our usage of our DCDL, with the number of active website users, which is where our core services are delivered, increasing by 78% just since 2022. And the usage and the impact of the DCDL is expected to continue growing. DCDL has been funded by the State Library Agency since the beginning, but we've not received any additional state funding for the program since 2015. Along with usage increases, operating costs are rising, especially those that are associated with the specialized personnel that the law requires MSLA to support. Over the past several years, MSLA has allocated $235,000 in general funds to support personnel and other resources for DCDL. But the funding needs of DCDL exceed this annual allocation at this point, and thus we sought a deficiency request for FY25 in the amount of $130,000. I'll add that to ensure the long-term sustainability of the program, Senator Nancy King is very generously working with us, as well as Delegate Ryan Spiegel, to sponsor a bill that would secure much-needed funding on an annual basis for years to come. I'll close in saying that we're very understanding and acknowledging the state's significant financial challenges at this time and the hard work that you and this committee have ahead of you. We agree with and deeply appreciate the governor's support of the Maryland State Library Agency, and I can assure you that we are working diligently to be responsible stewards of state funds and to effectively and efficiently serve all Marylanders with them. Thank you each for your support, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I think I've been arguing for funding for the state library system since I was about 3.
I think so.
Every year I'm doing that, and you know I get it that the governor doesn't like mandates and all that kind of thing, but the idea that we have to beg every year for the library system, it just doesn't make sense to me. So I do have a bill.
Thank you.
It'll be a really good bill, guys.
Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, we have Tim Pratt. Did you want to say something?
No, thank you. I'm good.
You're good?
Yeah.
They're all just, I believe they're all signed up, but unless they want to say anything.
We have a whole bunch of written testimony, but that's,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, thank you very much. You're
Thank you
home
so
free.
much, Senator King. Thank you all.
Okay, are the library people, or the Maryland, no, the Maryland Economic Development Are you all here? Do you want to come up? We have Elizabeth Weibel is the budget analyst and Tom Sadowski, the executive director.
Hi. Elizabeth, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be providing an update on the Maryland Economic Development Corporation, or MEDCO. This is an economic development entity that can develop property and issue bonds, although its debt is not considered debt of the state. It's also a non-budgeted entity and is primarily self-funded, although this year it does receive funding through a couple of other programs within the proposed operating and capital budgets. If you look in the analysis at the bottom of page 3, there's some information about 2 new programs that receive funding in the dedicated purpose account for fiscal 2026. The first one is $10 million for the Strategic Infrastructure Revolving Loan Fund, which was established by legislation last year. This fund is to offer loans for real estate and infrastructure projects with a focus on underutilized properties and areas that have the potential for significant job growth and retention. And that legislation also allows MEDCO to use tax increment financing to support the fund. The initial $10 million in the fiscal 2026 allowance is expected to support 3 to 4 major projects in the fiscal year. On page 4, there's $7 million for the Certified Sites Program, also in the dedicated purpose account. And this program was established by executive order in December. It is a matching grant program to identify sites that would be very valuable and very desirable to businesses if they had infrastructure investments. And so MEDCO can make some of those investments and then market the sites to attract businesses. Moving on to MEDCO's overall financial picture, it's pretty good. It's very similar to last year. Exhibit 1 on page 5 shows the corporation's net assets. The facilities that MEDCO operates are the line at the bottom of the chart, and the non-operating assets are the line at the top of the chart. The MEDCO managed properties are mostly student housing, as well as the Chesapeake Bay Conference Center and some parking garages in Annapolis. And the value of those assets declined in fiscal 2024, although MEDCO reports that a net asset deficit is not a significant concern as long as income exceeds the expenses, which continues to be the case. Exhibit 2 on page 6 shows income and loss from facilities that MEDCO operates. The overall income from these facilities in fiscal 2024 was lower than the prior year, but still positive. I'll just touch on a couple of the projects. The Chesapeake Bay Conference Center, which is on page 5, that one has been underperforming for a number of years. In 2024, its income was lower than the prior year, and although it is able to cover its operating expenses, it hasn't been able to make all of its debt service payments. Lenders for that project have extended forbearance, and it is making some payments toward interest. One of the student housing facilities at University of Maryland Baltimore campus, that has been underperforming for several years, and MEDCO is expecting that project to be sold in the relatively near future, which will remove that debt from MEDCO's books. Moving on to page 10 and 11, this has information about a couple of capital projects that are funded in the proposed budget. The Cannabis Business Incubator, this one under the Cannabis Reform Act in 2023, MEDCO is required to work with the administration on developing a cannabis business incubator space. So MEDCO is currently working with the Maryland Cannabis Administration, and the plan is to renovate the Catonsville Armory building in Baltimore County. The budget bill includes a total of $7 million in PAYGO funding for this project in fiscal 25 and 26. And once completed, the incubator will be transferred to DGS and operated by a nonprofit entity. The Maryland Cannabis Administration estimates that it will be able to serve up to 110 microprocessors and dispensaries. The Viva White Oak project is a public-private partnership working on a mixed-use development in Montgomery County. There are $6 million of GO bonds that were pre-authorized for this project and are included in the capital bill. And then on the next page, I mentioned the Principio Rail Spur, which is to service planned construction of a calcined clay plant in Cecil County. This one received GO bond funding in fiscal 2025, and so MEDCO is providing project management assistance and is in early discussions with the developer on project planning. There were some funds pre-authorized for 2026, but those are not in the capital budget as introduced. And this is not in the analysis because the legislation was just introduced, but the Decade Act, as introduced by the governor, has a few provisions related to Medco. Among other things, the RISE Zone program and the Build Our Future grants, which are currently in the Department of Commerce, would be moved to Medco under that legislation. That concludes my update, and I can take any questions.
Okay, any questions for the analyst? Senator Benson?
Just trying to recover. My car is acting up. If it's not one thing, it's another. I want to talk to you just a little bit about the funding for Bowie State University. I just happened to be there yesterday for a Saturday. Sorry about that. Saturday for a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful activity. And in talking with the students and the staff there, I was told about the fact that there is an overcrowded, the school is overcrowded, that's number one. Number two is there are many students, close to about 6,000 students that wanted to come to Bowie State, but for some reason were not able to come because of the funding. Could you talk to me, are you the person in the position to talk to me about the timeline for expanding facilities at Bowie State? Is she the one, Madam Chair?
So, not at the university in general, but Medco does operate one student housing facility at the campus or adjacent to the campus. So they wouldn't be the ones to talk to, I think, about funding for the university broadly, but they could speak to that student housing.
It's a tremendous problem. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good to be here. Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Tom Sadowski. I'm Executive Director of the Maryland Economic Development Corporation, MEDCO for short. With me today are my colleagues, Candace Dotson-Reed, who is our Chief of Staff, and Jim Miller, who is our Chief Financial Officer. Pleased to be with you and have an opportunity to discuss our budget and plans for the next year. But before I get started, I really would like to thank Elizabeth Weibel from DLS. She's just been terrific. The support we've gotten from her and her office has just been tremendous. And as always, she does a great job of analyzing our budget and prospects for the future. We've provided both written testimony as well as a copy of our annual legislative report for your review. So I'll be brief, but I do just have a few key points I wanted to touch on based on our projects and where things are headed for the next fiscal year. Real quickly, as we look back on 2024, we turned 40 years in existence, and we surpassed $8 billion in total revenue bond financing that we've afforded for projects. About half of that remains outstanding, and we are servicing that debt, as Elizabeth had profiled a number of the projects. But we are very excited about the way ahead, how we've stabilized that portfolio, and I think our number of projects is approaching about 350 right now. Last year, we had our most active year ever in our existence. We issued over $1.2 billion in revenue bond financing for projects. And this year looks to be more of the same. There's a lot of activity out there. We're trying to be very proactive in working with our state and local partners and private sector partners as well. As you heard in the synopsis of our budget, there are a number of infrastructure projects that we're being asked to help manage and bring forward. So a lot of growth in the state, and we are trying to sit there alongside our public and private partners to help make it happen. Our student housing portfolio remains stable, over 90% occupied overall. We're doing a lot of great work with our institutions, and we're beginning to transition now into more graduate housing, which helps do great things, bringing the best and brightest minds not only to campus, but helping to reinforce their research enterprise there and partnerships with industry. And now we're even getting into some energy projects where we're helping with the overall efficiencies of operations on campus and looking at new innovation district projects as well. We forged in 2024 strategic partnerships with major financial customers, or not financial, federal customers in the state, the Army Research Laboratory and NASA Goddard. And we're going to be working with them on infrastructure improvements and opportunities to help develop portions of their campus that welcomes in higher education partners as well as industry partners, again, to help commercialize the research work that's being done there and create new companies and startups. We've extended our partnership with the Maryland Department of Transportation, working very hard with them on transit-oriented development projects, as well as new community development opportunities along the Penn Line and throughout the rest of the state, areas where ridership is not only being encouraged, but we're helping to build out critical services and economic activity around those stations. We closed on a number of transformative projects. One, Reservoir Square in Baltimore City, a $60 million valuable mixed-use initiative there in the city. We are working at the Hyatt to finally start residential development around the resort. That'll bring that project, hopefully, not only to performance, but exceeding performance as we create more activity in and around the resort. And we are very proud of the fact that we've earned the confidence of the governor's office, and we are proposed to play a significant role in the execution of his economic growth plan for the state, not only in the way of taking over new programs and resources through the Decade Act and his recent executive order, but also as a member of his new Economic Competitiveness Subcommittee, where we're working alongside a lot of the key agencies and departments. So it's been a very active year. We have many exciting things teed up for the future. And again, thank you for your time and consideration, and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just curious, I represent St. Mary's in
Right.
Calvert County. And I'd be interested to know, do you have any projects that you are currently working on in those areas?
Some really exciting projects. We, with the support of the state, we've received upwards of $5 million in capital grants, and we're working with our friends in St. Mary's to develop SCIF facilities outside of Pax River and in local business parks that work to help strengthen the contractor community and small business community. So we've been very active in that regard. And we're working with Chris Casalemas on development of the Aero Park Innovation District. So we've signed on with them, and we're helping to execute environmental studies and help complete infrastructure improvements there at the Innovation District.
Thanks. I'm familiar with the two SCIFs that are going on.
That's pretty cool stuff.
Right now it is. We'll have 3 in St. Mary's, which is great. We appreciate it, and I'll catch up with you offline.
Okay, very
Thanks.
good.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I think we're in good shape. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, this ends our hearing for today. That was a fast one.